коллега, наша подруга из Швеции Сара Харальдсон. Мы познакомились с ней 2 года назад в Швеции. Через 2 года после этого мы с ней начали такой достаточно большой, достаточно уникальный проект в Беларуси. Мы запустили этой осенью менторскую программу для женщин в лидерстве. Очень успешно ее реализуем, как нам кажется. У нас буквально на этих выходных будет наш выпускной. Там участвуют практически 70 женщин в этой программе. И Сара согласилась для нас сделать лекцию сегодня, поэтому очень здорово. Спасибо, Сара. Сара является генеральной секретаркой шведской организации «Максалонген». По-английски это звучит как Power Salon, то есть салон власти. Сара уже более 7 лет делает менторские программы для женщин в лидерстве в Швеции. У нее очень огромный опыт. С ней можно много и долго говорить про менторство, про лидерство. Сара и ее организация делают очень много лекций, публичных выступлений и мероприятий в Швеции, за рубежом. И не только по гендеру, по гендерному равенству, но и по тематике стресс-менеджмента. Поэтому с Сарой тоже можно будет пообщаться, кому интересны про эту тему. Как раз таки Сара много работает именно с молодежью, со стрессом в Швеции. Это небольшая часть всех Сариных регалий и заслуг. Сегодня Сара с нами поговорит, мы назвали это краш-курс по гендерному равенству, то есть он такой достаточно вводный. Мы поговорим про гендер, про власть, про нормы, про гендерное равенство, сравним ситуацию в Беларуси, ситуацию в Швеции, подходы различные также. И это часть нашей сегодняшней лекции, первая и вторая часть. Мы очень хотим побеседовать с вами, услышать ваши вопросы. Те вопросы, которые вы прислали нам, мы передали Саре. Сара также ответит вам на ваши вопросы. Но если вы вдруг не услышите ответ, то, пожалуйста, не стесняйтесь, поднимайте руку, задавайте вопросы. И очень хочется, чтобы это была такая достаточно неформальная дискуссия, общение. Поэтому будем очень рады этому. Ну что, а теперь я передаю слово Саре. К сожалению, лекция будет на английском. Мы посчитали, что это будет очень сложно делать последовательный перевод, займет 2 раза больше времени. Поэтому, если кто-то, вы знаете, все понимает, но сказать не может, но хочет задать вопрос, спрашивайте по-русски, мы без проблем Саре это переведем. Надеюсь, что мы сделаем с нашей стороны все возможное, чтобы минимизировать вот этот языковой барьер. Поэтому встречаем, да, можно поаплодировать.
Can you all hear me? Yeah? Good. Okay, this is so interesting because now I know that Sasha has been talking about me for like 5 minutes and the only thing I understood was my name, my organization name, and that I'm from Sweden. So maybe I will repeat myself when I do my own introduction. But I am so happy to be here and to talk to you all about gender equality. And maybe Sasha said, but I'm going to talk for a while and then there will be time for some questions from you. And also some of you had sent in questions in advance, so I'm trying to work them in my presentation, and otherwise you can ask more questions at the end. I guess she's also said maybe we've had some technical difficulties as always. Yeah, okay. So this is just, my name is Sara Haraldsson and I am the founder and Secretary General of an organization called Maksalongen. Before working with Maksalongen, I've been in several civil society organizations that work with everything from student rights to youth rights, the Red Cross and so on. I also have a master's degree in political science from Stockholm University. Now I've been working with Maksalongen we founded Maksalongen in the end of 2011 and I've been working full-time with the organization for about 5.5 years. And this is what we do. Our goal is to create an equal society where power and influence are distributed fairly. We work to ensure that more young women see themselves as leaders and challenge norms that set a framework for how power looks and what a leader can be. So we work a lot focusing on leaders. We we founded as a mentorship program for young women who are leaders in young civil society organizations. And today we still have that leadership program and mentorship program. We have several other networks. We do lectures like these. We have different kind of projects, all working towards achieving gender equality. Okay, so what we're going to talk today about is gender equality. So I thought that it's best to start from the beginning. So let's start with this. What is equality? What does that word actually mean? Equality means the right of different groups of people to have similar social positions and receive the same treatment. When we talk about equality, we focus on a lot of different kinds of groups. It can be based on economic background, geographical background, if you have a disability, religion, what religion you have, and so on and so on. So equality is very broad. Is when we look at the society from a broad perspective. But we can also talk about gender equality. And when we talk about gender equality, we especially focus on the differences between men and women. So gender equality is the state of equal, I don't know where that came from, equal access of resources and opportunities regardless of gender, including economic participation and decision making, the state of valuing different behaviors, aspirations, and needs equally, regardless of gender. So it means that your sex or your gender shouldn't matter depending on what you want to achieve, what you want to work with, what kind of power you should have in the society, how much money you make, your possibilities overall. So you can say that gender equality is a vision for a society, and we don't really know what this society looks like, because throughout the history there has never been a gender equal society. I don't know what it's like here in Belarus, but sometimes in Sweden people say like, oh, but the gender equality has gone too far. And the thing with gender equality is that it cannot go too far, because equal means equal. And if in some aspect women have more power than men, that's not equal either. The idea of equality is that it's supposed to be the same. So you can't tip over on one side to become too equal. So that is just something that people normally say when they think that women take up too much space. So feminist, what is that? And feminism. Feminism is a social, political, and also activist movement and ideology. And it is a political ideology that wants to create gender equality. So gender equality is the goal, and feminism is one way of reaching that goal. The basis of feminism is the understanding that we live in a society that isn't equal, that the differences that exist between men and women exist between men as a group and women as a group, so it's not dependent on individuals when we look at group rights. And this ideology has the aspiration to change this. We want to achieve a gender equal society. Yeah, okay. I'm going to have lipstick all of this mic. So, feminism can be many different things, but it's all based on the same ideology and foundation. So they can be like liberal feminism, social feminism, ecofeminism, many different kinds of aspects of feminism. And you can want to achieve gender equality without being a feminist or believing in the feminist ideology, because feminism also comes with an understanding of why we are where we are today, what kind of power structures. You can say that feminism is an ideology that is critical to power and a critical way of looking at power. Okay, so we talked a little bit about gender equality, but of course when we talk about gender equality, we have to talk about gender. So what is gender and what is sex? And what is the difference between gender and sex? And here it becomes a bit tricky because in every language we put in different understandings in these words. For example, in Swedish we see gender and sex kind of the same way when we talk about it, but in English the words means a bit different things, and I don't know how it is in Russian, so you have to, try to understand it in your context. But in English you can see sex as very much the biologic sex. So what kind of reproductive and sexual organs are you born with? And it's also something that is stated in our passport. We have a legal sex as well, which is often based on our biological sex. Gender, on the other hand, is how we understand and express sex. So, for example, gender is also a process on how to become man or woman as we understand it in our society. So, for example, we have different kind of attributes that communicate what kind of gender we have. For example, women have skirts and men have shirts and women have lipstick, all those kinds of different things that signal if we are a man or if we're a woman. So you can kind of understand it like this. Everyone is born with a sex. Gender is something that is created during our lifetime. Maybe some of you know who Simone Weil, this French author, a very famous feminist icon, and she said that you are not born as a woman, you become a woman. And that's the idea of getting a gender, being raised in a specific way. And gender is everywhere, and that is something that we all grown up with. And it's also things that aren't specific to humans that we can gender. For example, if we know that pink is like girl color, blue is boy color. They could be neutral because it's just color, but we have an understanding of it when it comes to sorting it into gender. So why is it important to understand the distinction between gender and sex? Sex is something that is not that easy to change. It can be changed, of course, but it's not as simple. But gender is something that we create as a society. We have decided what is female and what is male. We have decided on how to behave and how to create humans in this specific gender. And we are the ones who decided that gender or sex should matter at all. Because that's not given by nature, it doesn't have to be that way. We could find some other characteristics to measure or divide into groups. For example, when we talk about this, there are always people saying like, yeah, but it's a difference between man and woman, we have different purpose, we have different organs, there should be a difference between man and woman. Okay, yeah, but you can also think that most of your hormones are produced in your pancreas, but we don't value our pancreas when we think about how we are as human beings. We don't put any significance into our pancreas, even though almost all of our hormones are made there. So understanding the difference between sex and gender can help us to understand that gender is something that we create and therefore we can change. Gender is something that we see everywhere in society, and it's something that we can see see in the big context of society is something that we can see in our school system or organizations or companies, and also something that is going on between individuals. So gender is created everywhere. And the problem is that when it comes to differences or discriminations between gender, and usually against women, it's very easy to see it on a structural level, because then we can have statistics and we can have, we can watch a big picture, but it's much more difficult in the interaction between two people. Why is he getting that job and not she? Why is he getting that kind of pay? Why is it she, and so on? That is much more difficult. But to understand equality, and especially gender equality, we have to be able to think about it from a structural, organizational, and individual perspective. And I'm later going to show you some examples on how this can look like. So, we're going to talk briefly about norms and power, because living in an equal society means an even distribution of power. But since we live in an unequal society, there is an unjust distribution of power, so we have to understand what is power. And something that's really closely related to power is norms. Okay, so what is a norm? Norms are rules that we kind of all know about, but they're not decided upon by anyone in particular. They're not written down, and everybody's just supposed to know them. For example, when you came in here today, no one had to tell you that you were supposed to sit down and be quiet. You knew that, because you know that when you go to a lecture, this is how we usually do it. There are a lot of social norms that help us in everyday life. If you ever come to Stockholm, where I'm from, you will notice that there is a very, very strict norm in escalators. If you want to stand still, you stand at the right, and if you want to walk, you walk at the left. And when it comes to people from out of town, they don't know if they don't know about this, and they stand at the wrong side of the escalator, people get super mad. And they don't know why, because it's not being posted a sign or something anywhere, but it's a very strong norm that everyone knows about. And that is just one example of a norm. But of course, norms doesn't always do good, even if they mostly do. Many makes our social interactions much more easier. But norms can also limit us. They tell us how to behave in a society, and if we don't live up to that norm, we usually get smaller space to behave as ourselves. And that is why I'm trying to show about this picture. So you can imagine this square is our society. And the edges of the square, inside of this square is all of the norms that we have in our society. And the person living in the middle, the small dot in the middle, that is a person who is inside of the norm, who is what we see as, who we build society based on, which, when we talk about gender equality, mostly is men. So if you're based in the middle of the square, you have a lot of moving space. You can walk around very freely. You don't even come close to the edges of the norms, of what is seen as normal. But in this example then, if you're a woman, you live more closely to the edge. You don't have as big space to move around in, and you're constantly living in contact with the edges. One of the maybe biggest problems with this is that we all live in the same society. So realizing that these norms exist, if you're standing in the middle, can be difficult because you never see them. You don't ever have to experience them for therefore it can be difficult to see them. And I think that sometimes makes us blind to the limitations that exist in our society. And I think if you just try to think about a few things, you probably experienced it today. For example, when I came here outside, you know, it's a super high pavement that you have to step up to. I have very functioning legs, and this society was built for having functional legs. But what if you don't? What if you're dependent on a wheelchair? Then it would have been very much more. I couldn't have taken this easy way into this house. So I don't even see the challenges that is an everyday struggle for someone else. I guess you heard also a lot about Me Too. Maybe that was a big discussion here in Belarus as well. Yes? Okay, good. Well, not good, but yeah. The Me Too movement became very, very, very big in Sweden. Actually, it was the country where it got biggest if you compare it to how many we are living in Sweden. And I think that is a great example on how you don't really understand the limitations of the norms if you are the norm. Because the reaction among many men in Sweden was like, oh my God, I never understood that this was a problem. And that is because it's never been a problem for them. It doesn't mean that the problem don't exist. Okay, and norms are connected to power. And this is a very, academic way of looking at power. But you can see it as person A has the power over person B to the extent that he can get B to do something that B wouldn't otherwise do. That is like the basic definition of power. So having the possibility to influence someone else to do things that they wouldn't have done otherwise. And that can of course mean a lot of things. It can mean changing someone else's mind, or it can mean to force them to do something that they want. And being part of the norm is getting power and having power in the society. And it means that power is more accessible to you than if you are not a part of the norm. So norms and power is very much connected. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about gender equality, but of course, as we all know, there are a lot of different kind of power structures in our society that affects the power that we can get. And there's a theory explaining this called intersectionality, and that is a theory or a kind of like a thought model that we can use to try to understand how different power structures enhance or decrease each other. So all of us are so many things. We have a gender, we have a skin color, an ethnicity, a religion, or we don't have a religion, we have our education, we have our social economic background, we have our abilities, our physical abilities, and so on. And all of those intersect with each other in different kinds of ways. For example, when I'm standing here in this room right now, I have super much power, because I'm the one deciding what's going to happen. But in another room, I can get a lot less power. For example, it's more difficult for me right now here to get power and to move the way that I usually do because I don't speak language. And that becomes a barrier for power, for achieving power in a society. When I come into a room to give a lecture, I almost always is the one who has the most power. But if I come into a meeting room, I because I'm kind of young and I'm a woman. And that affects the power that I get. So power is always connected to where we are in that particular moment. And power is always a relationship. So if I'm alone at an island, you can't talk about power. You have to talk about power in relations to others. So all of these different power structures, we have to put them together and see them in the context that we are at the moment. So power changes all the times. And there's a lot of different things that affects us. This is just some of the some examples. So we have educational level, what kind of education do we have? Our sexuality, our ability, our age, our gender, ethnicity, culture, language, class, race. All of these things can combine and either give us more power or less power. As I said, in some contexts, I might have less power not only because I'm a woman, but also because I'm kind of young. If I get into a room with 10 75-year-old men, they're probably going to think I'm young. And intersectionality is a way that we can use to try to understand how different things can be connected, but it's not like we can do a plus and minus list to try to calculate how much power someone has in any given moment, because it's so bound to the context. But it's a way of trying to understand how different things affect us in the society and why some people have more power than others. Okay, that was a bit of the bit I'm going to do about, like basic concepts that we have to understand and able to discuss gender equality. So I'm going to move on to talk about representation. Representation is something that we very often start with when talking about gender equality. How many percent women and how many percent men, and what kind of positions have that one achieved, and that, and so on. And why is representation so important? Do anyone know who these women are? I would be super impressed if you did, so it's okay. This is Julia Gillard. She was the Prime Minister of Australia until a couple of years ago. And then it was an election, and her party lost power, so she wasn't going to be the Prime Minister, and she was going to be replaced by another man. And after elections, the media always, they go out to the street to talk to normal people, and they ask people, oh, okay, what do you think about the election, and what do you think about our new Prime Minister, and so on. So this reporter walks up to a 6-year-old girl and asks, do you know that we've had an election? No. Do you know that we are going to get a new Prime Minister? No, I don't. What's her name? Because in her world, the Prime Minister is a woman. She has grown up in a country where the Prime Minister is a woman. I'm just gonna put in the wrong order. This is a bad idea. I had a picture that I thought I would show you. It's kind of fun. Yeah. These are the prime ministers that I've grown up with. This is the current and present prime ministers of Sweden. He on top there is our current, his name is Stefan Löfven. Can you see that anything that these prime ministers has in common? White men, yes, they are all white men. So these are the prime ministers ministers that we have grown up with, I have grown up with, and even if some people say that Sweden, now you got a preview of everything I'm going to say, so I hope that you checked really fast so you know everything. So that is one reason why we can think that representation is important. There's a saying like, if you can see it, you can be it. So having representatives that we can recognize ourselves in can also help us to imagine the possibility of one day becoming that person, to be able to be the prime minister or the president or a CEO of a big company or whatever. But when we think about representation, it is also important because having more women in different kind of executive and decision-making positions also changed the norm for how leadership should look like and what leadership is. This is a picture of Marissa Mayer. She is the CEO of Yahoo, which is a search engine company. When she got the job as CEO of Yahoo in 2012, she was pregnant, and most of the reporting about her getting the job focused on the fact that she got the job while pregnant. So even if she was wow. Is this good? Is it too loud? No, it's better. Maybe it's even better than before. Yeah. We have very nice background music in the drilling. Okay, so Marissa Mayer gets this super important job. She's super competent. She's been vice president of, CEO of Google Search before, so she's really experienced. But when the media is supposed to be reporting about her getting this new very important position, they focus on the fact that she is pregnant, which is kind of like a way of pointing out the fact that she is a woman. And women should not have important positions. In the same year that Marissa Mayer was made CEO of Yahoo, a woman in Sweden called Birgitta Olsson was made a minister in the government, and she was also being pregnant. And that was the first time that happened in the Swedish government, and the media went totally crazy. It was like completely, everyone thought that it was so irresponsible. It was irresponsible towards her work. She wouldn't be able to focus on her work. And it was also irresponsible towards her unborn child. She would have a mom that wouldn't be so present. And it was irresponsible towards her husband and everything like that. But she took the job, she did a great job and everything. And she had two daughters while being in the government. In the same government, 4 men became dads, became parents. And no one wrote about that. No one said that that was irresponsible. No one doubted their ability to do their job. No one doubted their ability to be a dad. And that was mostly because we are used to seeing dads in executive positions, but we're not as used to seeing moms in executive positions. And that's something that has to change in order to achieve gender equality. I know here in Belarus you have one woman in the government, and when we look at an international perspective, Okay, so that was a few words about representation and why that is important. But the thing to remember is that representation is a very good way to start when we want to talk about gender equality. It's a good starting point, but it's not the entire thing. There are so many different kinds of aspects that we have to remember when we talk about wanting to achieve gender equality. And there are a lot of different aspects that we have to look at to understand what gender inequality looks like. So I've been looking at both of the EU and Belarus, and I'm going to share some numbers and statistics, and then I'm also going to go later into examples from Sweden and tell you about what it looks like in my home country. Okay, so women in employment. Women have been, of course, working for a very long time. Women and men, when we worked in agriculture, everybody worked. But when we became industrialized, it became more common for the maid work to go away to a factory and work there, for women to stay at home. When we had agricultural societies, no one had to leave the home, so it wasn't as strict as, the women should do this and the men should do that. You did different things, but everyone worked at home. But when the world became more industrialized, that changed. The way that we worked and organized our families had to change in order to earn a living. So in the beginning, there weren't so many women working. And that is changing, but also kind of slowly. And here, actually, Belarus is super good in comparison to the EU, and even more women are working than men are. So in the EU, 64% women work and 76% men. In Belarus, 86% of the women work and only 79% of the men. But the thing is, when we look at labor markets, it's not only interesting to look at if we work, but also where we work and what we do. Because something that is extremely common is labor market gender segregation, which means that women have some occupations and men have other occupations. We don't do the same job. Normally we do different kinds of things. Sweden is actually one of the countries who has the most gender divided labor markets. But also things like working full-time or part-time also says something about our labor markets. 75% of all people in the EU working part-time are women. And even if 60% of all those who graduate from university are women, only 33% of scientists are women. So we know that even if we have the same possibility to do things, we choose to do different, to have different occupations. And in one way we can say that is a free choice. We can also, with our understanding of power and norms, understand that maybe that choice isn't necessarily so free. Something that often comes up when we talk about gender equality, especially in connection to labor market, is parenthood and parental leave. And as tradition, women still take a majority of the parental leave and responsibility for children and family. So in the EU, only 65% of women with children under the age of 12 work, which means that 35% of women stay at home with their children when they are under 12. And as I said before, 60% of all of those graduating from the university are women, so we know that we don't only have women being at home, but also very well-educated women staying at home. 90% of all men with children under the age of 12 work. And even if men and women do both work for family, there's very big. Is this sound up now? Or is it? Yeah. It's very big. Let's try it again. It's very big difference, even if both parents are working, how much work they do outside of their paid work and in the house. In the EU, women on average work 26 hours with household work and caring work and so on, while a week, 26 hours a week, while men only do 9 hours a week. So there's a very big difference on how much unpaid work that we do. And of course that also affects the paid work that we do. That's also a reason for men and women to work in part-time and so on, to be able to have the possibility to do all these things that is expected from us at home. And there is a gender pay gap. In almost, I think, all of the world's countries, there's a gender pay gap, which means that there are differences in what we earn based on our gender. When we talk about gender pay gap, we usually exclude all the things that we can see a reason for difference in pay. For example, we exclude if we have different kind of responsibilities and what kind of position we have, what education we have, all things that we can explain, we take away from the calculations and leave just the differences in gender. That is the gender pay gap. And in Belarus, the gender pay gap is 25%, meaning that men make 25% more than women. And the thing is, in most countries, the gap is closing, but not in Belarus. Because in 2001, the gender pay gap was only 19%. So the gender pay gap has actually become bigger in Belarus instead of smaller. Here is the gender pay gap in the EU. The average gender pay gap is 16%, so Belarus is 9% higher than that. And here we have Sweden, we have gender pay gap of 12.5%. And Estonia has the highest in Czechia. Czech Republic, I think. As you can see, the gender pay gap is still very big, also in the EU. But the interesting thing, I would say, is that Belarus is increasing instead of decreasing. Okay, let's move away from the labor market and talk about gender-based violence, which is another consequence of living in a gender-unequal society. So gender-based violence can mean a lot of different things, but you can say that it's violence that are directed towards us because of our gender common in Belarus. 1 in every 3 women have experienced domestic abuse. And if we compare that to the rest of the EU, we have a bit more different kinds of figures here. So 1 in 10 have experienced sexual violence. 1 in 20 have been raped. 1 in 5 have been physically, sexually abused by a partner. And as many as 43% has been controlled or physically, psychologically abused in relationships. So domestic violence is something that is very common still. And the problem with using the term domestic violence is that we forget the gender aspect of it. Because it sounds like there's someone fighting at home or something like that. What we have to remember is domestic violence almost always means men's violence against women. And the thing with violence is that it affects both men and women, but in very different ways. I don't know if it's the same in Belarus, but in Sweden, actually men are more often victims of violence than women are. The difference is that men fall victims to violence in a public place where he doesn't know the perpetrator, while women are victims of violence in their homes and the perpetrator is someone that they know. That is the big difference between violence against men and violence against women. Okay, gender and decision making. One part of gender equality is, of course, an equal opportunity to have power in the society. In average in the EU, 29% of members of parliament are female. The world average is about 22%. Does anyone know which country has the highest percent of women in their national parliament? Sorry? Rwanda, yes. Rwanda, which is the country in East Africa. I think they have like 56% women or something like that, and has been very high for a long time. Sometimes people say that Sweden is the most gender equal country. I will show to you in the world. I will show to you later why that's not true, and we don't have that great numbers. So now I'm going to just show some examples from Sweden and tell you what it looks like there. So I'm going to take you through some short important policy changes that were made that has done a lot of important things for gender equality in Sweden. So we start 100 years back. In 1919, women gets the right to vote. So actually just a couple of weeks ago, the 24th of May, we celebrated the 100-year anniversary for women receiving the right to vote. In 1927, women started getting paid maternity leave. In 1939 and 1940s, it became illegal to fire women because they were engaged, because they were married, or because they were pregnant. In 1947, we got our first female minister. She was called Karin Koch. So she was the first woman in government. In the 1960s, they established a law that said that women and men should have the same salary, equal pay. We don't have it still, 59 years later, but still. 1971, this was a super important law that made the way that you pay taxes based only upon your own income. Before that, married couples were taxed as a couple. And for some reason, that very important reform. In the mid-70s, we started to have free public daycare, which meant that all children have the possibility to go to daycare. And in Sweden, children are often off daycare very, very early. So many kids start daycare at around the age of 1. So it's a bit earlier than here. In 1974, they changed the maternity leave, the paid maternity leave, to parental leave, which means that both parents can take the parental leave. In 1975, we had free abortions. In 1995, one of the months in the parental insurance were devoted to the dad or to the other parent. So there is 1 month of the parental leave that can't be used by the parent who takes the majority of the parental leave. And that meant that a lot more dads started to stay at home with the kids. And now actually there are 3 months that is devoted to the dad when it comes to parental leave. In 1999, it became illegal to buy sex in Sweden, and this is a law that I know is copied in many other countries. So it's not illegal to sell sex because you don't want to punish the prostitutes or sex workers, but it's illegal to buy sex. In 2009, we got a gender equal marriage law, which meant allowing same-sex marriages. And last year, the previous law on rape changed into a law of sexual consent. So now you have to have consent, and if you don't, it's rape. And that was maybe one of the greatest or biggest public debates regarding gender equality for the past years. Okay, women in parliament in Sweden. So now we have like 47% women in parliament in Sweden. We have never had 50-50 or a majority of women, but we have almost something happened in the beginning of the 1990s. You can see that there is a very big bump between 1991 and 1995 in those elections. That was because the development has been very, very slow with women in parliaments, and there was a group of women getting really tired on it being so. So they said, like, if you political parties don't fix this, we are going to create our own women's party and get into the parliament. So then all the other parties that's very eager to raise women representation in their parties. So in the next elections, there was a huge bump of women in the parliament. So it's a very good way to achieve more gender equal representation, threatening to raise your own party. And in the government, we have a 50-50 representation. 50% of all the ministers in the government are women, but no female prime minister yet. And we're the only country in Scandinavia who is considered to be the most gender equal region in the world who haven't had a female prime minister. And now there are 2 major parties, and none of the party leaders for those parties are women, so we will probably not have a female prime minister for a while. When we look at business and big corporations, we know that of corporations that are public, only 23% of board members are women, and only 8.5% of the CEO are women. So women are very much underrepresented in big businesses. hopefully that is changing, because now all corporations have to report on gender equality. They have to look at and measure if they have equal pay and so on, to try to find the things that creates gender inequality at their business to change that. And as I said earlier, the majority of parental leave in Sweden is taken out by women, so 75% of all parental leave is taken out by women. Here is a picture showing the distribution of unpaid work. The darker color is female and the lighter color is male. And if you look at the numbers right at the top, it says housework. So you can see that it's a bit better than the EU average. But men do around 8 hours of household work per week, while women do more than 12 hours. So it's still a big difference between men and women when it comes to unpaid housework. In Sweden, gender equality has been a political goal for a very long time. There are some things that are especially prioritized by the government, and it's the equal distribution of power, equal distribution of income and monetary resources, equal distribution of unpaid housework, and ending men's violence against women. So, the big question is it becoming better? Are we on the road towards getting a gender equal society? Well, yes, but it's kind of slow, and in my opinion, too slow. And as I said in the beginning, gender is just a concept that we kind of invented ourselves. So it's very interesting that we allow it to limit ourselves as much as it does. And achieving gender equality means trying to change everything we know. We've never had a society in the world that has been gender equal. So when we try to imagine what a gender equal world looks like, we don't really know. And this is why I like this one so much. It says, sorry for the inconvenience when we're trying to change the world. Because getting a gender equal society is going to be difficult. And it's going to be inconvenient. But hopefully we can change the world and everything will become much better. Okay, so this is my last slide. But now we're going to open up for questions, and we have around a bit less than 15 minutes for questions and thoughts, reflections. And I think maybe, did we have another microphone?
Спасибо большое за лекцию. Я хотел бы задать вопрос по поводу слайда с заработной платой в Беларуси у женщин и мужчин.
Thanks a lot for this presentation. I would like to ask a question about the slide where you have information about the salary of men and women in Belarus.
This one?
Ну да, приведите просто. Разница в зарплатах. Подскажите, пожалуйста, для каких профессий составлялся этот результат? И учитывается ли в этом то, что в Беларуси некоторые профессии не являются женскими, на них по закону не запрещено нанимать женщин в принципе?
Если хотя бы превратить, было бы легче. О, спасибо. Ой, классно.
Учитывает ли этот результат, какие профессии учитывают этот результат?
Yes, if you know, you can answer, please.
Эта статистика, она каждые несколько лет там изменяется, процент управляется, они считают каждый раз сфер. Это называется первый разрыв показатель за равные ценности. Мужчины у нас получают на 24-25% больше, чем женщины получают. Там очень много профессий, разных сфер, начиная от промышленности, заканчивая госучреждением.
Спасибо.
Hi. Thanks so much for the lecture, for the Crаш-kurs. I understand that you are giving lectures quite often, but that's your job, and I'm wondering, you probably meet lots of counter-arguments from your audience. What's the most popular one, and how you deal with it? Or your favorites, I don't know, your issues.
My most common or my favorites counter-arguments. I think, well, now we are in the gender pay gap. That is very often questioned, if there really is a gender pay gap, which is easy to answer on because there are so much statistics showing that there is a gender pay gap. So it's a very common question, but it's very easy to crush. And then I think the question on choice is very interesting. Like, do we choose to live in this unequal way? Is it women's fault that they are prime ministers or CEOs? And since we have all these rights, isn't it really a question of women, taking more space and trying to get those kinds of jobs? And that is more difficult because then we have to go back to discussing norms and understanding power and how power is distributed. And I believe that it's not based. I believe that this gender inequality isn't a result of individuals' choices, but of power structures that we have in our society. So yeah, I think those maybe are my favorites, or most common.
Or I can just try and be loud. So my name is Tanya, and I'm a teacher and a civil servant. And my question goes back to the basics, to where you started with feminine. It's quite common for people to get divided into categories. One's thinking that you can only be a pro-feminist for men, or some think that men and women are equally feminists. I've met people with both views. I'm just wondering which one are you involved and what do you think is more effective? If we put this limit on identification and say it's inherently a female struggle, or if we allow everybody to get this label and put it on themselves basically.
I think that gender equality is something that will benefit both men and women and other sexes as well. So I think that everyone should be able to call themselves a feminist. When we look at history, we usually talk about the women's movement because in a historical perspective, it was a lot of women issues where the issues were focused on women getting specific rights, the right to vote, the right to go to university, the right for women to have equal pay and so on. But today, gender equality is a much more broad range of questions, which affects both men and women. So therefore, I don't think your sex should limit your possibility to take part of that change.
About domestic violence, are there any difference between same-sex couples and mixed-sex couples? You said normal, usual sex couples, it's often violence of men against women. So what happens with same-sex couples? Is there less violence in women couples
something that we can try to find out, because I don't know, maybe there's someone in the audience knowing if there's a difference. No. Okay. So we'll try to find out. I actually don't know if there is a difference.
What I should say for my boys' classmates when on PE lesson they says I can't play football because I'm a girl. How I can be good as they in this situation?
You can use a Swedish example if you want to, where the men hasn't had success in the World Championship for many years, while the women have had silver medals for many times. So I think that sports is an area where we divide very strictly between men and women, and we do that based on tradition, not necessarily because we have to, especially in team sports, and especially when you're a kid. Because the physical differences that can be between men and women doesn't really occur until you get older. So I think you should just tell boys to go across there and be stupid, and they usually play good.
Thank you very much for the lecture. To clarify on the intersectional theory, what exactly is the dynamics of this different types of oppression? Do you see it as a simple sum of different types of oppression, or is it something else going on there? I mean, like there's a theory that, for example, the boss struggle kind of affects it in a special way, like religion, was used as an influence to balance the right value of men, like killing the right value of women or like with ages or something like that, or race. It's just an instrument to create a status quo. So can you tell a little more about it?
Yeah, okay. So the thing with the intersectionality and understanding how different power structures work together, we have to kind of remember that that is a theoretical model that we can use to try to understand the world, but we can't, as I said, you can't, put like, okay, so I'm a woman, but I'm also white, and I have a university education, and therefore I get 5 points on this scale, because it's very based on context. And then the difficulty with understanding intersectionality is that there are so many aspects where we don't have statistics because it's not allowed in the same way. So we can say the gender pay gap because it's legal to have statistics based on gender, but for example in Sweden it's not legal to have statistics, and we don't have a tradition of having statistics based on ethnicity or religion or sexuality or ability and so on. So it's difficult for us to say how different power structures intersect with each other because we don't have the same knowledge regarding the other power structures that we have when it comes to gender. And also I think it also depends very much on the societal context. For example, in the US, it's very common to register ethnicity, which means that they know, for example, that the gender pay gap, they also have it broken down to white women, African American women, Hispanic women, Latino women, women of other minorities, in a way that most other countries don't. So we know that white women earn less than men, but we know that African American women earns less than white women, but that is statistics that we don't have in many other countries. I don't really know if that was an answer, but it's kind of, you have to try to understand that as theory that you can apply, not strict, but as an idea to understand power.
So my question is
part is, what are some discriminations that you personally faced in your life as a woman living in Sweden?
Okay, so the second part of the question where the mic didn't work was what kind of discrimination that I experienced. Okay, so when it comes to the first part of the question, the biggest challenges for women, I would say that the thing that is mostly discussed is, of course, the gender pay gap, because that has an effect on so many other things. It affects the possibility to share the equal parental leave. It affects what pensions we get in the future when we retire and so on. So I would say the equal pay is very important. And also, of course, I think it's impossible for us to even start imagining a gender equal society as long as women are being killed for just being women. So I think that's very important to mention. And also, of course, right now, as in many parts of the world, the question of abortion is big because of the laws that has been implemented in the US. Sweden has one of the world's most liberal abortion laws, but of course there are right-wing parties that want to reduce our abortion laws, which would be a huge setback, of course, for gender equality. Okay, so the discriminations that I have faced has been mostly my work. I started very young to work in young civil society, and I had very quickly a lot of power positions. So Maktsalongen, the organization that I work with now, it's very much, we founded on our own experiences of not having the same possibilities to have decision-making positions, to be the president of our organizations when we had the most power on paper. We didn't have it in the actual room. We were questioned in our work. So I think that, and also I've had an experience of very, very clear discrimination when it comes to income, where I earned like, 600 euros less than a man in the same position that I had to find out while I was doing a work for one organization. But I think the biggest thing has been kind of like the feeling or the understanding, which is so difficult to, directly pinpoint, that when I've been in power positions, I haven't had the same possibilities that men have had in the same positions.
My name is Svetlana, and I wanted to ask if you found, because you for some time in Minsk, yes, and did some more projects. Did you find something interesting here? What you can implement or think that you can implement in Sweden, for example, in Belarus? And as you work a lot with women, at what age you think a woman began, most active in feminism, for example, when she's a student or when she becomes a mother with young children, or just your opinion, and from what age you began to work, from school, from student, and what type of work you think more effective? For example, small meetings or TV programs or articles or discussions in internet, just or for example, because you work with different, I think, what you see more effective. And last question, what type of women organization you think also more effective, more powerful, let's say, NGO or political party, women political party, or something like this? What kind of women movement, if you just, I think, comparing different countries?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, so when it comes to policy in Belarus, actually the work that we have been doing here together with our rights has been very focused on the methods and the project, so actually I haven't had really the possibility to get that detailed knowledge about the policy situation in Belarus, so I can't really answer the first question. The second question was when women also start to become feminists. I would say actually, you mentioned having kids, I would say that is the most typical point in life where men get feminists. When men have daughters, they usually start calling themselves feminists. For women, I think it happens earlier, probably while studying or when they start to enter the labor market, when they start experiencing the gender inequality and understanding that they don't have the equal opportunities that everyone has been saying for all those years. I remember that being a very frustrating time for me. Okay, and then it was the most effective kind of movement. I think it's a mixture of all the things you say. I think that there's no one way of doing policy changing or trying to change society. I think that we have to have discussions, we have to have seminars, we have to talk to our friends, we have to drink wine and argue at parties, we have to have programs and speeches and social media. But I think the thing that is common for all of those things is to talk, no matter if it's in a seminar or at a party or with your friends or in the parliament. It's always, trying to change the norms, and we do that by discussing. And the last question, I would say that it's a mixture of if I look in Sweden, what has achieved this change is a mixture of NGOs focusing on women's rights and also like the women's section of political parties. So the women's section have been very successful in influencing the political party in their policy making, but then also the NGOs has been very successful raising the issues. So it's been kind of like the women NGOs raises an issue, and then the women part or the women league of the political party gets the party to change their official party line, and then that can become policy. So I think they are both equally important.
Well, Sara, is it working? Doing me? Sara, thank you so much for this lecture and for this question and answer session. Actually, we got a lot of questions in your responses, to this event. Unfortunately, we don't have time as usual. It's like every time you organize an event, but you want to devote more, to questions and answers, you usually don't have enough time. Maybe, I don't know, if you still want to get an answer to your question, we will be here for some time, but just we promised to everyone that we'll finish at 8 p.m. and it's a bit more than 8 p.m. so we cannot prolong, your time. So maybe you can ask Sara, approach us, talk, or just you can write to us. You can follow our page on Facebook, on Instagram as well. Just support this connection, and we are always here and there to talk to you. Like, you know, we are very open, in fact, so you can approach us by any means and we can talk to and provide you with some answers from our side. Thank you, Sara, again.